Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for the penultimate Roscoe's recap of the season, and this viewing party was for season 17, episode 15. And the guests this week were Jules Sparkles, Jessica Wilde and Thorgy Thor. So today we're going to be talking about Jules Sparkles allegedly broke the rules on set, Arrietty's mirror message for Onya Nerve was apparently supposed to be a joke, and Thorgy Thor talks about a queen she would never work with again because they were so mean. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. So they started off by saying thank you to Jules because she had been scheduled to appear at Roscoe's previously, but then WOW pulled her so that she could appear at the Drag Race Live 1000th show in Vegas. But then Jules had a cancellation last minute and said she wanted to come to Roscoe's and everyone cheered for Jules. Naysha then joked and said, quote, and F World of Wonder for pulling her the first time around. Naysha then asked Jules, did she envision that she would make it to top 4 on the season? Jules said no, and she thought every week that she was going to go home. Then, towards the middle of the competition, she thought she, quote, had this in the bag, but then she didn't get any wins, so she felt like she was the next to go. Naysha then asked what the relationship is like between Jules and her chismosa sister, which is Arrietty. Jules said when they first started filming, she connected with Arrietty right away and they became really close. But then, quote, everything went crazy that one day, presumably referring to when Arrietty stole Jules' jokes during the roast because Arrietty was annoyed at Jules for where she placed her in the running order. Jules said when that happened, because everyone was very anti-Jules because of the running order, Jules thought that she, quote, effed up big time, but then watching it back, Jules thinks, quote, I kind of ate that, no shade, and everyone laughed. Jules continued and said she was so nervous because she thought she was going to get the villain edit because of what she did. But then, after filming, it took about 2 months, but eventually Jules and Arrietty did speak on the phone and they, quote, talked it out. Apparently Arrietty also did not know how everyone reacted when they read her mirror message about Onya, because no one had mentioned to Arrietty that everyone was so upset at what she said, so Jules had to be the one to tell her. According to Jules, Arrietty said, quote, it was a joke, I meant it to be a joke, I didn't mean it. Naysha mentioned that when they showed that moment in this episode, she clocked that when Jules read out Arrietty's mirror message at first, she sort of laughed and looked at the others who were upset, and then Jules changed her expression. Jules laughed and explained that she had just come off the lip sync for her life, so she was all shaken up and sweating and she just wanted to go and read the mirror message. But when she was reading the mirror message, it didn't even cross her mind and she didn't process what she was actually reading, so she laughed at first, then she turned around and saw the other queens were not happy, so that's why Jules then suddenly changed her expression, and she had to look back at the message, read it again and thought, quote, oh bleep. They then watched the first lip sync of this week's episode, which was the lip sync Lollapalooza for the eliminated queens. And the first lip sync was Hormona Lisa versus Lydia B. Collins. They all said that Lydia won the lip sync and that Hormona did her reveals too quickly. Jules said she thought they both did a good job, but she thinks Lydia was better, and Hormona was, quote, very excited and took off all of her reveals. But Jules explained that when they were getting ready for the episode, Hormona told her that the only song she wanted was the Liza song, because Hormona had won 6 pageants doing that song. Naysha then joked that the gag is that that was the only song that Hormona did because she lost that lip sync. They then watched the lip sync of Lucky Stars versus Acacia Forgot. Naysha said that Lucky's outfit was the same outfit that Lucky wore when she was a guest at Roscoe's, and Lucky apparently made that look upstairs at Roscoe's before the show. Naysha said, quote, it just upsets me a little bit because everyone puts so much into their drag, so to see someone, quote, slack because it's been 10 months. Jules sort of defended Lucky and said no one had really seen that look apart from at Roscoe's, but Naysha said Lucky wore it at both Roscoe's and also on tour. Thorgy agreed with Naysha and said you should spare no expense when you're doing the level of drag like on Drag Race, and Naysha said you're competing on a show. They then watched Joella versus Susie Toot, and they all agreed that Susie won. Naysha asked if they thought it was shady that Susie picked Joella to lip sync against, because the implication is that Susie felt like Joella would be easy to beat. Jules agreed and explained that when they were getting ready in the workroom for this episode, Joella was already, quote, peed off, and Joella and Susie were getting ready next to each other. Joella apparently said, quote, "Girl, I know they're going to pick me first, I'm over it." And then Susie did pick Joella, and Jules said Susie is a, quote, shady bee. Joella was also mad when she came back after the lip sync. Jules then did a jokey impression of Susie talking about Joella and said, quote, "Oh, you're insecure? Perfect." Also, during Roscoe's, they read out the announcement that had just come out, which was that All Stars 10 has been announced and will be premiering on the 9th of May. But there is no official cast list yet, and they said that Roscoe's will be back for the All Stars 10 viewing parties. Naysha joked that she has no idea who is going to be on the season, but then she made a face and everyone laughed because clearly Naysha does. But Naysha said she's excited to see how they're going to do it with 18 queens on the season. They then watched the lip sync between Corey King and Arrietty. Jules said when they watched the lip sync on the monitor while on set, she thought Arrietty smashed it. And you could apparently see Arrietty's reveal much better than you did in the edited version that you see on TV. But in Jules' opinion, now watching it back, because the stage is so black now and Arrietty's outfit was black, it kind of got a bit lost and it, quote, didn't do it justice. But Jules said Arrietty should have known that because they filmed a whole season with that stage. Jules explained that at Roscoe's, no one gagged when Arrietty did her reveal, but on set it looked a lot grander, so all of them on set thought Arrietty won the lip sync. They also couldn't really see Corey's face because of the camera angle that they were watching it from, but now watching it on TV, you can see Corey's face a lot more, and Jules can see why Corey won. Host Caramel said that Jules had mentioned that Arrietty should have known better about the stage being dark, but also, Onya was dressed in a dochi look this episode, and Susie talked about watching the season back. So Caramel asked how much time there was between filming the season and then filming the lip sync Lollapalooza. Jules kind of hesitated, and Naysha told her to hang on because she doesn't want Jules to get into trouble by saying something that she shouldn't. Naysha then said she had heard through the grapevine that they filmed this episode about 2 weeks ago. They apparently finished filming the season in around July last year, and then they filmed the Lollapalooza about 2 weeks ago. So some of the queens had around 8 months between filming the season and then filming this episode. They then watched the lip sync between Lana and Crystal, and they all said how surprised they were that Crystal had been eliminated so early on the season, and she's so good. Jules said that Crystal is one of the most talented queens she's ever met. She's so, quote, meticulous with every detail. And we've heard that some of the queens this season had binders full of information, like Lexi Love. But Jules said Crystal also had binders with a page for every single look and what makeup went with what look. Also on set, they're given drawers to put stuff in, and Crystal had organised every drawer with the looks and things that she would need for every episode, so Crystal was one of the most prepared people on cast. Jules joked and said that it was, quote, a little psychotic, but she also said maybe Crystal was a little too focused on that. Naysha said she'd heard that Crystal was also one of the nicest queens on set as well. Jules agreed and said that when Crystal got eliminated, a PA knocked on Jules's hotel room door and gave her a gift of a red wig that Crystal had left for Jules because Crystal thought Jules looks good in red. And apparently Crystal had left a gift for every queen. This does make sense because I also saw that several weeks ago, when they did the Truman Capote acting challenge, Crystal had tweeted saying that several of the queens were wearing things that Crystal had left behind for them. They moved on, and Naysha said that Jules, Sam, Onya and Corey had great confessionals this season, and she asked Jules if she had fun doing the confessionals. Jules said the producer who did Jules's confessionals with her was really good, and they paired her with the perfect person. Just to explain, this is the person behind the camera who asks the queens questions during their confessionals to get them to talk about certain things, and you can sometimes hear that producer's voice asking questions during the confessionals. Jules said she and her producer had a meeting on the phone before the season and they just clicked right away and it was giving, quote, bestie vibes. Then, during the confessionals, she just made Jules feel so comfortable and Jules gave a shout out to Ashley, which was the producer. Cara then said that when Sam Starr was at Roscoe's a few weeks ago, she said that she and Jules obviously know each other from before the show because they're from the same drag family, but they decided not to make too much of that relationship on set because they didn't want to be put in the bottom together. And so, Cara asked Jules how true that was. Jules said it is true, but she and Sam didn't have a super strong relationship before, but they obviously do know each other because they come from the same drag family. They also got some stuff made for the show by the same designers, so they knew that each other were going to be on the season. Jules said that Trinity the Tuck, which is her drag grandmother, was such an incredible, amazing help and mentor throughout the whole process. And she said to both her and Sam, quote, y'all cannot go up in there and be besties. But they didn't end up having to think about it that much because both Jules and Sam just naturally made friends with different people on set. And she and Sam were a bit more in communication before the season, but then when they got on set, they just didn't interact that much. Naysha asked Jules who she's closest to from her season. Jules said she still talks to Lana, Crystal, Corey and Susie, to which Naysha said that's half the cast. But Jules explained that she's a, quote, yapper and she talks to everyone. They then asked Jules who she does not speak to, and Jules said Sam is just hard to get in touch with because she never replies back to you, but they are close. They asked the other queens who they are close to from their seasons. Thorgy said she was really close to Chi Chi DeVayne and she misses her every day, and everyone clapped and cheered for Chi Chi. Thorgy is also close to Bob the Drag Queen because they already knew each other, and Thorgy also became really close with Naysha after the show when they did the season 8 promo tour, and Thorgy realised how cool Naysha is. Jessica said she's also really close with Naysha and they hang out all the time. She's also close with Candy Muse and Jimbo. Jessica joked that she hates Candy because she eliminated her on All Stars 8. But Naysha said Candy told her one time that the reason she chose to eliminate Jessica is because Candy knew that Jessica would beat her in a lip sync and Candy thought she would have a better chance against Jimbo. So it was actually a compliment that Candy chose to eliminate Jessica because she was scared to go up against her. They then got to the part of this week's episode when Susie won the Lollapalooza and everyone clapped and cheered for Susie. Naysha asked if everyone agreed with the outcome, and Cara said that when Corey started covering up the nipples on her breastplate after the reveal, she knew that Susie was going to win. Jules said that being on set, she thought Corey was going to win, and she felt like Corey did better in person, but then watching it back now, Susie was, quote, turning the party. They moved on, and one of the questions was about the makeover episode and Jules' dad and his drag name being Salchicha. Jules explained that when she put all of her family in drag during lockdown, her dad's name was Salchicha even back then. Then, when they got to set, she wanted to change his drag name to be something to do with Jules. But apparently her dad said, quote, this is not about you, this is about me, this is my moment on Drag Race. And he wanted to keep the name Salchicha. Jules laughed when telling the story and agreed that her dad should have what he wanted, which is why they kept the name. Caramel then asked if Jules' dad also had a reveal under his coat. This question is because a lot of people wondered why Jules did not do a reveal during the runway. Jules said she wasn't going to talk about this and, quote, rat him out like this, but she admitted that her dad did also have a reveal on under the outfit, but when they tried everything on, he said that he didn't really feel comfortable, so Jules said it's okay and he didn't have to take anything off and they'll do whatever he feels comfortable with. And Jules said she wasn't going to do her reveal and then just leave her dad not doing the reveal, which is why neither of them did it. Naysha explained that they had a conspiracy theory that they wondered if Jules didn't do the reveal because she knew she was going to be lip syncing and she wanted to save the reveal for the lip sync. Jules explained that she knew what the lip sync song was going to be. She also knew she wasn't going to go home because she knew that she was going to turn that song out. Jules also said for her dad to go on national TV and do drag, especially as a Latino man, it's so uncommon because the machismo culture is so strong, so Jules was already so thankful for her dad agreeing to do it in the first place. Also, speaking of Jules's reveal, I saw a little bit of tea about this outside of Roscoe's, that apparently Jules broke the rules with her reveal. So I saw an article by Pink News talking about this tea, and that was that on a recent episode of Race Chaser podcast with Willem and Alaska, Willem said that production mandate that the queens tell them if they have a reveal, but apparently Jules didn't. And here is a clip of what Willem said.
Do you know that the girls now, if there's a reveal, they're supposed to tell production and let them know beforehand? You have to. It's like mandated.
Hold on.
And Jules
just a
wore that fur coat
second.
on set for 11 hours and didn't take it off. Nobody knew she had a reveal on under it. 11 hours.
That's a stunt.
Stunty.
Good
I love her.
And I just thought this was interesting and kind of gives some extra potential context behind the situation of the reveal. Okay, so back to Roscoe's, and they moved on to the Q&A, and host Batty Davis asked Jules how many times she auditioned for Drag Race, and Jules confirmed that she only auditioned one time and got on. They then talked about Latino representation on Drag Race, especially because Jules, Naysha and Jessica are all Latina. Jessica explained how difficult she found it speaking English on season 2, and back then, the production staff only spoke English, so Jujubee was the only person trying to explain things to Jessica, but Jessica joked that she couldn't understand Jujubee either. But now on Drag Race, about 90% of the PAs are Latinos, so Jessica feels like Drag Race is changing and they have Spanish-speaking franchises now, like Spain and Mexico, so things are changing with more Latino representation. There was then an audience question which was about the room-mails on the TV screen, and do the queens actually see the room-mails or do they add it in post-production? Jules said it depends. Sometimes there is an actual room mail, and then other times one of the production staff just reads out loud what will appear on screen, and the contestants just have to fake their reactions as if they were really watching it. Jules added that for the Lollapalooza, what they were watching on screen in the workroom was just one camera feed, which was a kind of bird's eye view of the stage, and that was it. And it wasn't super close up, which is why they couldn't really see the queens' faces that much, and that's also why Jules was so wrong with a lot of her predictions as to who won the lip syncs. Naysha added that they do the same thing with the celebrity video messages, and for example, when Jennifer Lopez did a video message on season 14, the queens didn't actually see the video of JLo on screen. One of the production staff just read out what JLo had said, and the queens just faked their reactions to it, and then the actual video of JLo was added in post-production. Jessica said on her season, although she didn't specify which season it was, she said that RuPaul was not there for some reason one day, so one of the production staff just came out and spoke to the queens, but then in the edit, they made it look like RuPaul was there, and Ru must have just filmed her footage separately. There was then another audience question which was, does Jules regret not throwing Arrietty under the bus when she stole her jokes in the roast? Jules said that that was, quote, one of the all-time worst roasts, and she didn't want to take any credit for the jokes because they weren't funny anyway. And this sort of makes sense because you may remember that in a previous Roscoe's recap I mentioned that Susie did an interview with Entertainment Weekly where she said that Jules had said to her that, quote, I'm going to hold this in, I'm not going to say it unless Arrietty says it, because if she goes home tonight, I don't want this to be part of her narrative. Also, Jules had even posted a video where she told people not to attack Arrietty and said that Arrietty actually did her a favour by stealing the jokes because the jokes were not even funny to begin with. There was then another question for the queens on stage, which was, which queens have they worked with and they're glad to not work with them again, and can they share an anecdote about that queen? At first, Batty joked that Naysha does not want to work with Derek Barry because of their past feud, which I have talked about on this channel. Naysha then made a joke about Derek and said that one time Derek had an empty line at the meet and greet, so Naysha was able to go and hash things out, but she clarified it was just a joke and her and Derek are cool now. Naysha then went on to say that the thing that she hates the most is when queens are late for no reason, because it means that they think their time is more important than your time, and it's really unprofessional. Thorgy then said, quote, "and not to say any names, Alyssa Edwards," and everyone screamed and laughed. Naysha also said, quote, "and her daughters, that's the gag." Naysha then asked Thorgy who she would never work with again. Thorgy then went on and told a story, but she didn't say the name of the queen she was referring to. Although quite a few people started shouting out Violet Chachki, but Thorgy said Violet gets a lot of crap thrown at her, and although she can be a lot, she's actually really cool and professional, so it sounds like it was not Violet. However, from the comments and the discourse online, people are pretty unanimous in thinking that Thorgy was actually talking about Alyssa Edwards, although this is not confirmed. So the story was that several years ago, last minute, Thorgy was asked to be on the Haters Roast, which was a tour when a group of Drag Race queens would do a roast of each other, and the tour would travel from city to city, and the lineup of the queens would also change. Thorgy said she was asked to do it last minute in New York because a queen dropped out, and she did such a good job that they asked her to come back for the rest of the shows. However, this was at the time that Thorgy had filmed All Stars 3, but the season was not out yet. Then, one night, the queen in question got up and did her set, and she apparently spoiled to everyone that Thorgy got eliminated in episode 2 of All Stars. Trixie Mattel was sitting next to Thorgy during the roast and grabbed Thorgy's leg under the table when this queen said that, because they couldn't believe that the queen had spoiled it. Trixie apparently said to Thorgy, quote, "What did you do to her, girl?" And Thorgy said, quote, "I don't know, but I'm up next." So Thorgy rewrote her jokes to try and, quote, negate the jokes that the queen had just said, and she wanted to try and make it fun for everyone and try and make it seem like the queen was just joking about Thorgy being on All Stars because she didn't want to spoil it for everyone. Thorgy referred back to what Naysha had said about queens being late, and it's true that when people are late for no reason, it's really bad. And Thorgy said about this queen's roast that, quote, "this was just garbage, and it's because they didn't know what they were doing, and they were bad at roasting, and they shouldn't have been there in the first effing place." Thorgy also said that the queen's jokes were really mean, and they said things like, of all the queens on tour, the queen they hate working with the most is Thorgy Thor, and the jokes just made everyone feel, quote, uncomfortable. At Roscoe's, they all asked Thorgy who she was talking about, but she didn't say. But Naysha said, quote, "it's Alyssa Edwards. It's definitely Alyssa Edwards. Everyone is going in on Alyssa, that's what it is." But Naysha ended by saying that they all love Alyssa, and Thorgy agreed. Also, after Roscoe's came out, I saw that people online were talking about what Thorgy had said, and they were all speculating about who it was that Thorgy was talking about, and most people agreed it probably was Alyssa Edwards. People were also sharing other things that queens have said about Alyssa, such as when Trixie and Katya were on Hey Queen, and they said that Alyssa was, quote, a diva, and watching Alyssa's secret is different to living it. They also told a story about when Alyssa once almost got into a physical altercation with Mimi Unfirst during a tour, and Alyssa apparently said that she didn't want to be on tour with B-grade queens, and apparently Milk had to separate Alyssa and Mimi while eating pizza. There was also another story which I've covered on my channel before, which was that there was a rumour that Alyssa apparently got into a fight with Trinity the Tuck on a Christmas tour. Alyssa then once talked about it at Roscoe's, and she admitted that it was a true story and that she had punched Trinity in the face because apparently Trinity had done something to Alyssa. And if you want to know the full tea on that, I'll link to that video in the description. And so we don't know for certain if it was Alyssa that Thorgy was referring to, but it seems likely from what people are saying. However, please remember that this is all just speculation, and this is queens just telling funny, shady stories, so please do not use this as an excuse to send hate to anyone, and just consume this type of content passively. So there you go, there was the Roscoe's recap for RuPaul's Drag Race Season 17, Episode 15. Would you have rather had a lip sync Lollapalooza or a reunion episode? And who do you think is going to take the crown? Let me know in the comments. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my latest Patreon member, Celia, who joined in the You're a Winner Baby tier. Celia, you are a winner, baby. If you'd like to get early access to my videos as well as have your comments featured in my Have Your Say videos and access to the exclusive Patreon chat, please check out my Patreon because it just costs a few dollars a month. It really helps support my channel and it really does make a huge difference to me being able to make these videos. So please check it out and I'll put a link in the description. And I'd just like to say thank you so much to all of my existing Patreon members. Your support really does blow me away every single time. I love the community I've built on Patreon and I love talking to you all on Patreon. So thank you so much for your continued support. It really does mean more than you know. Please make sure you like and comment on my videos because it really helps boost the video in the algorithm and promote it to more people. And please make sure you hit the subscribe button if you liked this video and you want to see more of them. Thank you for watching and I hope you'll join me again in a future video. Thank you, bye!